I'm going to call this meeting of the Gloucester Public Schools School Committee to order. I'll remind everybody that the mission of Gloucester Public Schools is for all students to be successful, engaged, lifelong learners. And I'm going to ask you I think it's appropriate, given the situation in the world today, in this country, that we reinstitute the flag salute before our meetings. And in addition to that, I would like to ask that we have a moment of silence for our bus mechanic, Rick Owen, who died tragically and unexpectedly over this past weekend. So that being said, I'm going to share my screen. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. This meeting is recorded by video and audio in accordance with the state open meeting law, consistent with the governor's orders suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and banning gatherings of more than 10 people. This meeting will be conducted by remote participation. If you're calling in on a phone, you can press *9 to request to speak. If you're watching on a computer or a device, there is a raise hand button that you can tap or press to request to speak. Please use either of these options during oral communications to be recognized to speak. And that being said, I'm going to open it up for oral communications. Eric Lee, I'm recognizing. Eric? You'll have to unmute yourself.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Eric Lee, Gloucester High School biology teacher. And I'm calling in with just a question that I wanted to find out, perhaps that you have pursued this. And I just want to bring to the attention that on January 8th, the Baker Polito administration, as well as DESE, offered a program that needs to be requested for by the 15th for pooled testing within the schools. And I don't know if this is something that you have already expressed interest, but it is without cost to the schools and would allow for batch testing to be done. And it is a trial program that they're starting out. It will take multiple students and may help solve some of the problems that we may have, or the difficulties for some students who do not present currently under the testing protocols that you have. I believe the student has to present the symptoms within school. And that's really my inquiry, just to understand if you will be pursuing this PCR test.
We're aware of it, and maybe Ben or Safafia could respond to that.
I'll give a full update in my presentation tonight, my school update, and not only that we have already expressed interest, but I'll give a full update later tonight.
I thought you might have, but thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you, Eric. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak under oral communications? Okay. Seeing none, Laura Wiesen would like to make a statement.
So this statement is from myself and Samantha Watson. We're both going to make it. So thank you, Jonathan. We, the elected representatives of this community, have important work to do here tonight. But tonight it's not business as usual. This body, the Gloucester School Committee, is the product of a democratic republic. We decide to run for office. We go through legally required hoops to get on the ballot, and then the people of this city vote and decide who will represent them. Once on the committee, we discuss, we debate, we listen, we disagree, and we vote. That's how democracy works. It's a beautiful thing to behold. Here in Gloucester, in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and in the United States of America, the success of our system means that we agree on certain basic assumptions. There are facts, there are opinions, and there are lies. Second graders in Gloucester Public Schools learn how to distinguish facts from opinions. Critical thinking skills are a major thrust of the later years, helping our students learn how to distinguish lies from truth, to ask questions, and to seek answers from reliable sources. This is how we teach our children.
We are now a week after the horrific mob attack on our Capitol building. At least 5 are dead. Our nation is shaken to its core. This attack was driven by lies. At this moment, it's imperative that every elected official in every town, city, and state in this nation speak out against the violent assault on truth and democracy that we witnessed. This is unacceptable. This is unprecedented. This is dangerous. And we all have a role to play to ensure that those who want to destroy our democratic system are held accountable. We're grateful to serve on a body with such dedicated and honorable public servants as these men and women. And we urge that we all redouble our efforts to speak up for truth and democracy whenever we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam and Laura. I guess that wraps it up quite nicely to open this conversation within the community and within city government as well as the state government. But ultimately, you hit on the issue here is there's truth and there's lies. And we need to produce students that can tell the difference. And that's our job in life here. Thank you. Recognitions. Laura?
I have, oh, okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Mayor, you can go ahead.
Well, it's not a recognition. I just wanted to send my condolences to the family of Tony Parisi. He was one of our, basically, you can call it a resource officer at the high school, was DARE. He passed away, he was retired. I just wanted to give our condolences to his family.
Laura?
I wanted to give recognition to the teachers throughout the system who are working not only with the kids who are in school, but all the kids who are quarantined and just continuing to show care and support even when kids are at home. It's something we don't always know about and we don't always see, but they're just doing a tremendous job even after the kids go home to support those who are at home. And I want to recognize that.
Thank you. Any other, Melissa?
Thank you. I want to recognize the mayor and her administration and the public health department for bringing the capability of being vaccinated in Gloucester at a time where we're all anxious, waiting when our turn is, and knowing there is uncertainty into how quickly the vaccines can get distributed. I think it's remarkable that Gloucester is on the map as a place that people will have access to the vaccines, and hopefully that will help when our teaching staff and other employees can get vaccinated, that we'll have that ability to be close by. So thank you, Mayor, and everyone who was responsible for making that happen.
Absolutely. Okay, any other recognitions? I don't see any of our student advisory council here. If by chance you're in the attendees, raise your hand. But I'm not seeing them there either. So we'll move on to the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that anybody would like to remove for further discussion or other consideration? Joel?
I'd like to remove the June 24th meeting minutes, please.
June 24th, school committee meeting minutes?
Yes.
Okay. Is there something you'd like to point
Yeah.
out? Yes.
On page 7 of the June 24th meeting minutes, They state, quote, Chairman Pope referenced the school committee member authority policy filed BBAA Article 7, which states that it is the duty and obligation of individual school committee members, quote, to accept the will of the majority vote in all cases, end quote. I don't feel, I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I don't feel it accurately reflects the entirety of what happened. The minutes should include that the chair accused Mr. Favaza of violating school committee protocols and policies. And that's at the 1 hour, 45 minute, 30-second mark in the video, where it was stated that me participating in writing to the state violated protocol and policies. As the committee knows, I've requested in writing that this be taken up twice now, June 26th and September 22nd. It has not, but I want the minutes to reflect that I was accused in open session of violating policy, rather than the way it's characterized right now, that the policy was simply referenced.
So we will remove those, meeting minutes of June 24th, 2020, and bring them back at our next meeting in a corrected form.
I move that we approve the consent agenda,
Second.
minus those minutes that were.
Minus the
removed.
minutes. Okay. As I get to this point, I realize that we didn't do the roll call for attendance, but let this this vote serve as that attendance record also. So Maria, could we have a roll call vote?
Ms. Prince.
Yeah.
Mayor Taken.
Yes.
Ms. Watson.
Yes.
Ms. Weason.
Yes.
Kathy Clancy.
Yes.
Mr. Favaza.
Yes.
And Chairman Pope.
Yes, it passes unanimously. Okay. And we will move on to our deliberations on educational issues and the superintendent's report. And I will turn it over to our Superintendent Lummis.
Now I'm unmuted, learning still. Good morning, good evening, folks. Great to see everyone here. Sorry about that. I'm going to give you an update on a few things. Karen Carroll couldn't be here tonight, so I will do my best impression of her. And let me share my screen. Actually, before I share my screen, I want to say a couple of things just about Gloucester and the way we're doing things here. I got a note. I got a few of these actually, but one in particular around the December break. A note from a family simply thanking me for the work I've been doing, but also pointing out, when I mentioned that to enjoy the snow day. And well, I appreciate that. I mean, I can't tell you how much I appreciate that sort of notes, and I got a bunch of them. The reason I'm saying that is because one thing I've learned about how Gloucester operates is that people show appreciation and gratitude for the work we do. And I've gotten that in many cases, and I appreciate that, but our teachers get that, our nurses get that. Tonight on school committee, folks shared that. And it's, in these days when it's so hard, it's not a small thing. And it's not, I would say it's not as common as we would all hope it is. But here in Gloucester, I've learned it is, and it is a remarkable thing. And I just want to say to folks, thank you for appreciating our teachers. Thank you for appreciating our nurses, our principals, our school committee members. Keep it up. It helps a lot. And if you think about thanking somebody, please go ahead and do it, because it makes every bit of difference for that person, no matter how big or small a thank you it is. So it's just something that I've really learned and been impressed by and been touched by here in Gloucester. That's one thing. And I also want to shout out and appreciate to Joan Lindenberg, who many people may not know. She's a noon supervisor who works at Beeman and has worked there since the 1960s. She's 85 years old, shows up every day for work. I had the opportunity and the honor to speak with her this morning when I was visiting Beeman, and she is a living history, a fabulous person, a great example to our kids, and also a hoot. And we had a nice time together, but just want to shout out to Joan Lindenberg and just acknowledge what tremendous service she has given to our schools, our community. Her children went here, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren are around, but unfortunately they're in Ipswich, so they're not going to our Gloucester Public Schools. But she was close to having 3 generations having gone here, and And she's just a tremendous asset to us and a great part of the Beaman community. So I wanted to just say hey to Joan and thank her for her work. So moving on. Let me share my screen. I'll give you the update for tonight. Fair bit of news here. So as I always like to point out, we continue to have as our objective, safely educating as many students as possible in school and remote, which we continue to do. I'll give you a COVID update on the schools and the city, and then Greg Bach will share with us an attendance report year to date. So we are 73 days into school. Last week on the 70th day of school, East Gloucester had a 70s day. I'm not sure where these folks got these outfits because none of them were alive at that point, but that's another matter. You can see folks dressed up in all sorts of garb, 70s garb. That is Freddie Mercury of Queen, in case you don't recognize him. Some people may, some people not, maybe not, but just showing people honoring, sort of taking note of the significance of getting to the 70th day last week. So good stuff at East Gloucester. I'll give folks a update on total cases reported in schools, and also we'll start with a city update. And the city update is, it's not new news for folks, but it's concerning. It's difficult. You'll see these are reports, that I give that I show every time. I also gave one just before Christmas here. What's notable are a couple of things. We have 179 active cases in the city right now. That's the highest we've had, I believe, since the springtime, certainly recently. That's a lot of, I spoke to Karen on Sunday, spoke to Karen today, so I'm passing along information from her really. One thing I will point out is you see in October, high of 65, and then it came down again. Then we went up again because of Thanksgiving, up to 123, and then came down again to 72, and now we're back up again. What we are all hoping, and we all need to do together here in Gloucester, is bring that number down again. And we know how to do it. We've done it in the past. And that is staying safe, following safety protocols. I'll talk about those in a little bit. But this is certainly a difficult time. And it is, as Karen reported to me and has reported publicly, most of this is family transmission, family and friends getting together, some small gatherings. There are a few clusters, but most of it is family and friends getting together. Limited number of cases or significant spread in businesses and schools. But it does mean we need to redouble our efforts of mask wearing, hand hygiene, staying safe, especially when we're with our families. So here are the indicators that Karen has shared with you in the past. You'll notice that there's little green on here. The positive test rate in Gloucester, 6.2% now. The patients in hospitals are increasing statewide, but as she has reported, in Gloucester, still doing quite well here. The testing capacity continues to be strong. It varies depending on where people get tests, but we keep track of how quickly people get tested or get their test results returned when they're related to the schools. Karen's reporting that the average in the state is 2 days turnaround. I will say to people that, and she's explained this to me, and I've heard it anecdotally. It certainly does vary place to place depending on what lab they use. So that's the by far the most tests are coming back in 2 days, but some do take longer, and especially on the holidays they took longer. Those turnaround times have grown shorter in the past week. We are getting some turnarounds in a day or less than 2 days as well. The contact tracing capacity is definitely hitting sort of some limits here in Gloucester, and because of that, Karen explained to me that they're reducing contacting all close contacts, except for in the case of school age or seniors. So this is very important for us to understand that if there are any cases that involve the family or contact with school age students, that they drill down and follow all the close contacts and reach out and make contact with all the close contacts and help them understand the quarantine and self-isolation. So we aren't necessarily being affected by right now, but they aren't. But other contact tracing is more isn't as thorough and complete as it has been in the past. And the primary reason for that is obviously the number of cases, but many of these cases have more close contacts than in the past because of people's behavior in and around the holidays of gathering. So, but what's important, very important to us in the schools is that they are still prioritizing school age children. Any cases that involve school age children or families of school age children, they're contact tracing just as they were. Our wastewater virus level across the city spiked 2 weeks ago to the highest level. It came down some last week, but still quite high. And the next report comes out tomorrow on that, comes out on Thursdays. And then as we've talked about, in terms of the threshold for state testing in our schools, we haven't reached any of those. That's 2 or more in a classroom, 3 plus students or 3% in a grade, 3% in a school, or two or more on a single bus. I will talk more about that as we go along. Any questions there from the school members? And I don't know if I'll be able to answer them, but if you have any questions, I can see if I can clarify something I said. No. Okay. Let's get to and people can ask if you want, let's get to the school cases. We've had a total of 92 cases since the beginning of the year. 68 of those have been resolved. That's staff and students. So 24 currently active cases right now. That's the highest we've had in one of these reports. Close contacts, and a few things have changed. Close contacts, most cases have no close contacts right now. And that's because they are holdovers from the December break. Many folks who are close contacts of a family, say, or whose families have held them out, or kids who had symptoms, or staff even have stayed out. Most of them have, and so because of that, there have not been close contacts. There haven't been many cases, most cases which had no close contacts. But we have had a small number that have had a bigger number of close contacts than we have expected or we have seen in the past. So that's a small number of cases in the schools have had more close contacts than we've had in the past. A few sort of very specific reasons for those in terms of the types of classes or individual or staffing or student and where they were. We are certainly seeing more people quarantining because they are close contacts from close exposure. That was ticking up before December break, and we're probably one of our highest moments now. Another shift I have not added to this slide is of the 24 cases, they're about split evenly between staff and students. That's the first time we've seen this. That's happened since this December break. Prior to December break, all fall, I would say I'd estimate it was sort of like 80-20 students and staff. Now it's much more even. I don't know why that is. I could, I don't want to, presume to try to draw a conclusion on that. Very importantly, it's in here in red. We have had one case of in-school transmission, and I'll dive into more of that recently. So in January here, we have been, as you we have been concerned about in-school transmission from the very beginning. It's one of the key indicators we look at for safety and for health, and also for our learning model, and also if we have to change or get testing from the state. So let me tell you more about this. This is a case at Beeman. It was identified yesterday. It comes from being a close contact of a case last week. Okay, so folks who were close contacts of that case last week have to be tested. They're doing the testing. Our school nurses are in close contact with those families or staff if they are, so that we get their results are reported to us as soon as they find out, or as quickly thereafter as possible. Of the cases of the close contacts that have reported back on the testing, there was one positive case. So that's of the close contacts we've had in school. That's the first time this year that one of those has become a positive test. Yesterday, we communicated with Beeman families and staff last night. I happened to be at Beeman this morning and saw some, and just visiting classrooms, but was there and just available at least. Beeman does only have 3 active cases now, which is fewer than they had last week. So that's a positive. Another positive is we know pretty much exactly what happened in this case, and sort of the situation around it. So there isn't any mystery to us on this. We aren't sort of confused about why it happened. We are aware of the situation surrounding it, and we will continue to work on mitigating that so it doesn't happen again. So our next steps at Beaman specifically is we'll continue to monitor all these cases every day. If there are more cases related to this initial case, so if there is any more in-school spread, we can get mobile testing from DESE. We are in contact with them today about that. We could go remote with one grade or multiple grades. We could go remote for the whole school. We are not there at Beaman yet. There isn't any reason to do that at this point, okay? There are only 3 cases there. We are watching and paying attention to those who are quarantined or close contacts. But we want everyone to know that, we keep a close eye on it and we are prepared to adjust if necessary. And we'll watch it every day. Let me pause there to see if folks have any questions about that or concerns. Okay, don't see any. Great. So here's the total number of cases across the schools. You'll see that it varies across the schools. Gloucester High School last week was not the highest, but this week it is again. It makes sense. It's the largest, it's the largest school. They've had a number of cases just in the past 5 or 6 days. Most schools that you see are below 5. All other schools are below 5 at this point. One thing that is that everyone should know is that this changes day by day. It's not surprising we have more cases in the schools when the city's is at its highest level. But folks, are come off this, they come back into school, they work through this. That's one of the things we're looking at now. I'll talk more about is just how we are keeping a very close eye on the data. And we're looking at all these pieces every day. First, of course, working with Gloucester Health Department every day. We look at the number of cases, the total cases and the new cases each day. We look at where they're happening. Okay, which schools, which grade levels. We always are tracking and keeping track of. This is our nurses doing this work, okay? And I'm involved in terms of get reports, and I'm in contact with Jeff Parko numerous times every day about each case. So we follow the test results for in-school contacts. That's how we learned that there was one case of in-school transmission. Another thing we're looking very closely at, and I speak to the principals very regularly about, and they of course are thinking about this every day, is staffing. As I mentioned, we do have more staff out because of either being quarantining for being close contacts out of school or in school, or because maybe they're positive. There are more staff cases than there were in the past. All those cases from staff have come from outside of school. We look at the level of symptoms. So are more students or staff going out or going home, I should say, during the day because of symptoms? All right. Are folks who are quarantining, do they have symptoms, or are they quarantining asymptomatically? One of the ways we gauge that is by the tests that we administer in school for folks who are symptomatic. So last week, across the 5 days, we tested 11 people. That's a combination of staff and students across all schools with our PCR testing. This week so far, I think we have 7. So, that's about tracking equally. If that bumped up, that would help us understand that there's more symptomatic folks with symptoms in schools. That's something to be aware. In talking to Karen Carroll, she suggested we keep an eye on that. I would really stress to folks, to families who are listening, or yourselves, anyone I can, or their principals communicate this is, we need to keep doing what we're doing. We will continue to assess it. We'll adjust when we need, but very, very important is our protocols work. And our families and our staff are abiding by them, and they're helping. And when they do, things go well. What I mean by that is especially to stay out of school if you have symptoms or feeling sick. By and large, the vast majority of folks are doing very well with this. They're quarantining outside of school if they need to. If someone in their family is sick or they have symptoms, they stay home. That has helped us tremendously. It's a crucial, crucial aspect of staying safe in our schools and keeping our kids in school. So I really urge families and staff to keep on doing that. Folks, as I said, are staying out of school if they're supposed to be quarantining. They're doing a great job of that. Mask and face coverings, healthy hand hygiene, and of course, staying safe distance from each other. We know the safe distance from each other varies in school and during learning times as it does outside and versus out of school. That's one of the calculations and choices we've made. It's working out very well. But we do need to continue to remind people to stay safe distances as best they can in school and out of school. And all these things apply in school and out of school. These just aren't in school things. When people are with their families, when they're with people they don't live with, these protocols, this guidance helps as well outside of school to take care of your family. So we really do need to keep what we're doing, but we will continue to assess and we'll adjust as we need. So here are a few things that we'll continue to do. Continue to monitor all close contacts and positive cases. We'll monitor our staffing situation. We'll support our new cases in schools and continue to look very closely for if there is any transmission in our schools. We'll continue to be in contact with DESE and DPH about the rapid response team in case we need testing for a whole school or many schools. I will go into these last two that are in bold in more detail. We'll look at whether cases lead to changes at the classroom, grade school, or district. At this point, we don't need that to happen. But what I want everyone to know is we're literally assessing that every day. Nurse Parko, Greg Bach, myself, through Jeff Parko to the nurses, but also with our principals. This is something we think about every single day about whether we have to make a change. And there have been times that we've been close with one school or another. But things remedy themselves. Just last week with Beeman, some staff were out for a variety of reasons. But since then, folks have come back in. So as I said before, the status of individuals and the status of any school or the status of staff or students does change and changes day to day. And that's why we look at it every single day. And then we'll continue to evaluate and when possible, add testing for staff and students. So let me go into these a little bit. You've seen this before. This is how we've been operating. So just to share with you, remind you, on the left here is our decision making chart and protocol. On the right here is a blow up of one piece of it. And I'm sharing the blow up here just to remind the school committee and also the public that we have different options. So if there is school transmission, beyond what we've seen in one place in one time, or if there's too many staff who are out and can't be in school, we can close one or more classrooms and shift remote learning in them for a period of time. At that time, we could keep high need students in school. We could do grade level. We could do a school by itself. We could do one or more schools that could shift to remote, and high need students could remain in person. We could, in the red here, all schools could shift to remote learning for 2 weeks or more, or for a defined amount of time, but we could keep our high need students in person. Or worst case scenario, all schools would shift to remote learning for 2 weeks minimum. So these are all possibilities. What I want to stress at is there isn't a one size fits all. We will respond to the data. We will look at the school situation very closely and make a decision based on that particular school, the cases, if there's any transmission, if there's any staffing issues, that sort of thing, and we will continue to adjust and assess, and as necessary, we'll make adjustments in our school model. Let me pause there. I'm not sure if Megan has a question. She has I see her. She has her hand raised, and so does Melissa. I see Melissa too.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, we can hear you, Megan. Yep.
Hi, sorry, I've been having so much technical difficulties. I just didn't know if you guys wanted me to speak now or if there's a better time I should do it. Up to you guys.
Jonathan, the next step I would do is an update on testing. So we could have Megan's update now or do that. This might be a nice time to pause. It's up to you. Or do we want to have questions from the committee and then maybe pause?
You're muted, Jonathan.
I just said that, but nobody heard me because I was muted. Why don't we take Samantha and Melissa's questions and then go to Megan?
Okay, great.
So Samantha?
Thanks. So Ben, Do we have substitute nurses if and when a nurse has to quarantine or is out due to sickness?
Sure, Jeff Parko can replace a nurse as he does on occasion. He can step in. And then I think at this point, we have one substitute nurse. He's actually training her this week. I'm not sure if it's her or her training the substitute nurse this week. So now we do. We haven't up until now, but now we will.
Melissa?
Thank you. I see on the agenda, the next topic is attendance report. Is that attendance report reflect attendance maybe dropping currently because of COVID, or is that a different attendance report?
No, it's attendance. I mean, it's this year's attendance, including, including people who are quarantining or have been out for any reason.
Okay, so my question, I guess, right now would be the holidays came and gone, and we knew it was going to be very difficult during these weeks as a result of people testing positive for gatherings over the holidays. I think we're at our worst, and I hope this is our worst. But are we seeing a significant amount of kids not coming to class for the in-class teaching because of the remote? And I'm not talking about kids that have been identified to quarantine. In other words, I'm trying to find out if there are families in our community that are afraid to send their kids to school right now, or can you tell me if any of those parents have requested that their kids be transferred to the remote academy?
We've had a few, but limited. We've had a few limited requests for remote. That happened, but not many since coming back after summer break. We had some right before. We
Okay.
But I don't think that's expanded recently. Greg Bach is sort of monitoring that. And if I'm misspeaking, please correct me right now. And then, so we haven't had a huge uptick in that at all. I don't know specifically in terms of, we definitely have more folks out quarantining, that's staff and students. So we are aware of those. I don't know, and I'm not sure I could find out if there's, beyond that, folks who are holding their kids out for any other reason other than a real sickness, or cold, that sort of thing. We do want folks to remember, we are really telling people to stay home if they're sick. We are encouraging that and really expecting it. But I don't know if we could, I don't know myself. I could ask. I'm not sure we would really have a good indication of what reasons folks are holding them out. I have not heard from the principals any commentary on people saying, I'm not coming in, it's not safe. We haven't heard that, but I don't know every detail. Greg, yeah. Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, just very briefly to reiterate what you said, we do have several people who have requested remote academy, certainly at the elementary level, but those came in prior to the holiday break. There has not been an increase since January 4th as far as numbers and requests, and in checking in with the principals, recently, they had not seen any significant changes at the school level.
Yeah. And just anecdotally, Melissa, I mean, this is purely anecdotally, we've had three requests today to come back in person.
Okay.
So.
And go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. There's a little delay, I think, between us talking because of my internet. So then my final question is, on the last slide that you showed, you offered us different options to either shut down by class, by grade, by school, or whatnot. And knowing that the committee relies on your decision-making in that, because the school committee only meets once every 2 weeks. So are you working in conjunction with Karen Carroll when you make those kind of decisions? In other words, I know you meet every day or once a week with your management team, and I know she's included in that. Are these kind of conversations happening daily or every couple of days to determine how we should proceed with being open or closed, getting the advice of the public nurse?
Yeah, so we do it in a variety, we work with the Department of Health in a variety of ways. First of all, Jeff Parco and the folks at the Department of Health, their nurses are in kind of every single day. We also, that includes Sylvia Vandenberg, who works both at the Department of Health and at the high school as a nurse. So they're literally talking every day about cases, that sort of thing. I'm also part of the COVID task force that meets weekly, and that's where, Karen Carroll and all, city departments and city agencies and other partners are reporting about, the status of COVID in the community. So that's another way I'm interacting with Karen and getting information directly from her. I also get daily case counts in terms of the citywide from them. And then, Karen is always, she's always on call, or whenever I need to reach her, I can. So for example, we spoke on Sunday, we spoke today. So we're speaking, 2 or 3 times a week regularly, usually. But the reason we talked on Sunday was just about the, an update around, staffing. I talked to her today because of the in-school transmission. So, it's sort of based on what's coming up. And that helps us, guide me and talk through with her about whether we should change, what we should look at, what other options are. So it's like a regular conversation, really.
And I ask these questions because, like, I have a coworker who has her student is in another school district, I think in Beverly. And if you look on Facebook and see people who are in other communities, you see that a lot of schools have shut down for this time period. It was planned before they left for vacation. There's a lot of deep cleaning going on and things like that. So there's a lot of questioning as to, how is Gloucester staying open? We hear there's a lot of cases. We know there's 9 or 10 at the high school. Why are they still open? So I'm just trying to have this conversation and get information out for those people that wonder those types of questions. We're very successful in Gloucester. 70 plus days in is huge accomplishment, and I think we should be proud. We clearly have a school district that's committed to keeping our kids in school. And from what I'm hearing you say tonight, we're doing all the right things. We're working with the health officials. The information is looked at daily, if not twice or 3 times a day. So just trying to get that messaging out for people that are listening, just because those types of conversations are going on within our community of, how can we stay open when other communities are quick, especially ones close by, our neighboring communities that are very quick to shut down their whole school with less statistics. So I was trying to get a good understanding of that.
I thank you, Melissa. There's all at the same time. There's a lot of schools that are open and have remained open. We were getting information. Superintendents were sharing information, North Shore ones, about who is staying in their hybrid model or going remote for this week and last week. Okay. And it came out to be about, sort of, I would say, a rough estimate, 60-40, 60 staying on the same model, 40 doing a sort of remote for the time being, and so what I'm trying to say is there are more folks in than maybe people realize. The people at high school, for example, shut down, I think last week, but I think my understanding is that the other grades are open. So you see an example like that. In terms of, we've tried from the very beginning, and I've stressed, and this is, and Karen Carroll has too, is making decisions based on, what's happening here as opposed to what's happening in other communities, and it's hard for me to answer why other communities, are closed when, maybe their indicators say they should be open, right? That's their decision. That's their process. I continue to feel, and Karen supports this, that folks are safer in school, that we're managing it quite well. I think the other piece to say to folks is like literally like every single day, this is top of mind. There isn't a day that goes by that, I'm not dealing with this, trying to figure it out. Our principals aren't trying to figure it out. Like, is this the day that we need to close down? It literally is. That's a decision I make every single day based on the information we have. It's relentless basically. And so we need to be.
Yeah, we have more questions, but could we just hold them and let Megan give her report from the high school, then we can come back to questions. Okay. So Megan?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, I want to again apologize for the technical difficulties I was having, but I would like to report that GHS, even though we've been having those high numbers, I personally, I feel as safe as we can be during this time. I definitely feel like the school is doing a great job keeping it clean, keeping us all going one direction, and whatnot. So I'd just like to say that before I start. But to get with my little list, Student Council and NHS will be doing the secret pals coming up for teachers, trying to, add some excitement to the hallways, trying to, just let the teachers and the students interact as safely as we can. Gilnutter has posted some new articles in the paper. They've been working really hard, even during this tough time. NHS tutoring has been getting more students, and they've been doing so good. We have both FaceTime or Zoom, and then we also do in-person tutoring at the tutoring center. Our drama club submitted entries to the Massachusetts Educational Theater Scholarship Contest, where the contest asks the students to use their skills in various aspects of the theater to prepare their work to be reviewed by local professionals. And the contests are amazing opportunities for the students to get feedback from working professionals, allowing them to grow as performers. So Seamus Buckley, Nate Oakes, AJ Procello, and Madison Coltron all submitted work. Hopefully they'll win. We're rooting for them. Our March blood drive was canceled due to COVID. Some news from Guidance. They hosted virtual on-spot admissions interviews with representatives from Salem State on Tuesday, and they had 41 students participating, myself included. And finally, the Youth Advisory Council has a free food locker with help from NHS and the ROTC. It's food that is pre-bagged and pre-sealed, very COVID safe. The bag's made up for students who on the way in school, out of school, whenever can go out and grab a bag of food to bring home. And this week they've had 18 students grab food, and they made 15 deliveries to students as well.
Thank you. Any questions of of Megan? I can't tell if people have their hand. Melissa?
Thank you. Megan, do you know if the high school is still collecting socks? I know at the last meeting or a couple meetings ago, there was a drive to collect socks, and I went out and bought a couple, but I never got to drop them off, and I was just wondering if they're still collecting, if you know that they are or not.
I know that Rockport has finished. I believe that we are still collecting. We'll always take them, and we'll always go and donate to the homeless shelters. We'll help as much as we can. I don't know if we're officially still doing it, but the senior who was doing it, her name was Avery Smith, and she was the one who was in charge for GHS and was in contact with the Rockport students.
Okay. I have them. I can bring them to the shelter or to the other organizations in Gloucester that are doing it, but if you were still collecting, I'm more than happy to give you. I got a bunch of packages of them. But
you can drop them off to the front,
again?
and you can. Avery Smith is her name.
Avery. Okay, I'll try to find her. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Are there any other questions of Megan? Okay. Thank you very much, Megan. I'm sorry about your difficulties with technology. I hope that doesn't roll over into your schoolwork. So
Thank
thanks.
you.
And we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Great. So going back to questions, Kathy?
Yes, Ben, part of your slide said in-school testing, and I'm just curious how, how much that has been done since we've been able to do it when, people are in school with symptoms and we have the ability to test.
Yeah, so last week we did 11 tests. So far this week we've done 7 tests. Although I don't know off the top of my head in terms of numbers of positives or not. There haven't been that many. There have not been that many. Jeff and I do talk about this. I just don't have the numbers at my fingertips. But I don't know, we started December 14th. We're using the shallower nasal swab, so that's good for folks as opposed to the all the way down the brain probe one. But it seems to be going well. I mean, it's folks are when they come in, the nurses, don't hesitate. If they have symptoms, that's really important. We have had some confusion about can people come back into school to get tests if they have symptoms, and we're not allowing that. We may make some exceptions if a family, if a student of a family who has significant extenuating circumstances, has no other way of getting a test. But at the same time, the Department of Health has made, through Beauport Ambulance, has made, and also through the Gloucester Health, I want to say Health Alliance, it's not right. Gloucester, the Family Health Center, a variety of options for families. And so that's outside of school. But we do want to make sure that our families have access to testing. One thing that's very important, at the high school, we've had a little bit of misunderstanding and sort of and difficulty communicating clearly with families, especially our English language families, English language learner families. And the high school's worked over the last day or so is putting in place a much clearer decision-making tree and much clearer information about the resources that the Department of Health and also the schools can provide those families who need testing outside of school. So that's, I'll share more about testing and a little bit about the pool testing in a little moment, but we are continuing to try to get clearer and clearer to help our families that don't have easy access to testing.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Laura?
I just wanted to, Ben, I was going to wait till your testing part, but following up on what you just said, because I had heard some questions around testing for the most vulnerable or people who just didn't have access to test, to go to Leahy or go to Stop the Spread sites or whatever. So there is improved information for families.
Yeah, there is. We're continuing to work on that. And there's this frustration out of concern. I'll make two things clear. One is that the PCR testing we're doing is for symptomatic folks who have symptoms. So if our close contacts don't have symptoms, and so we can't provide that to them. And that's one of the reasons it's no cost. At the same time, the Department of Health for a while now, I mean, this is not new, this has been going for a while, has provided testing through Beauport Ambulance for folks to either, I think, for ambulance to go to a residence, or I think transport them to a testing center, and then the Family Health Center. The challenge we have had and are getting better at, but still not there, is understanding and then communicating those options to families, and then helping families, if we can, to avail themselves of them. Some families don't want to take tests. That's fine. And the work I mentioned, this is brand new over the last 24 hours at the high school, is to make that process and those options much clearer, especially to some of our staff who really support families who are in need. And I think, so we're, again, work in progress, continue to get better and better. And I think we're getting there, but we'll keep an eye on it.
Great. And are the nurses all aware of all the options for kids who are quarantined or students who are close contacts, they don't have symptoms, they go home? Are the school nurses able to provide families, with these options sort of in a clear way?
Yes and no. They're aware of the options. The communication has been challenging, and sometimes they do it very, we do it very well. And it's not just, it could be a counselor, it could be a teacher, it could be a principal, it could be a dean. So we try to communicate the best we can with the right person. Language barriers can be difficult, but also just the complexity of it can be difficult. So this is the one place we need to continue to get better at and do more work on. The mayor is certainly aware of it. And I think especially this piece I talk about with the high school, getting a little clear on the decision-making will help nurses and other staff.
Can I continue on that one? Well, first of all, as you all know, I worked in healthcare, so there's no way in hell that I would let anyone go without testing or to get there and to be first and whatever. What's happening is once they leave the schools, and if they have no symptoms and if they could have been called for close contact, or someone will call another person. What's happening when the city calls and they want to talk to the person, the family, they see a strange number, people don't answer it. So then the screener would call the people who they know, which is our teachers. And, and that's kind of hard because the teachers we have are great, and they'll take the calls and they'll say, okay, now you got to listen and you got to call to the nurse and everything else. So time gets lost. And a lot of people thought that by sending an ambulance to their homes was like, oh my God, what are we doing? What's happening? It scares them. You don't know what's happening. Is it just a test, or they don't understand that prior we drive them by ambulance to one of the sites, or even urgent care that we would pay full price for. And then once the ambulance services started doing testing, as we all know, the Beauport does testing, they would go do the testing, which a lot of people do, and they pay privately. But, it was kind of scary when you don't know what's going on and you lived in any other country, and when you see those things, you panic. So we now understand through the teachers, because we've been talking to them and working with them very closely to understand to the students like a list of things that they should know and do. And if they see certain numbers, how could they do it? And some of the teachers said, I don't mind in the beginning, if they want to call me, I'll let them know someone's going to call so we can get that quicker. And that's what's happening. I mean, we all want everyone to be tested fairly and treated fairly. And that's what we always do in the city of Gloucester. So that's not the problem. The problem is some of the communication that you don't think we take for granted. When an ambulance is going to come test me in my house, I'll be, happy. Yay, I don't have to go anywhere. But to someone who doesn't understand, they're thinking it's even worse. They're sending an ambulance to me. So yeah, but absolutely, everyone has rights to testing and where they should go to test. And there was a lot, and not just a little bit, a lot of miscommunication on symptomatic. I hate that too. If I'm in school, all right, so I'm going to tell you I have a headache so you can test me. Come on. And that's how I said it. That's so baloney. So I can't wait for this other kind of testing. So, but you know what, we're working together, and you know what, we do got great guidance counselors, teachers, nurses, everyone is especially at English as a second language. The teachers there have just been amazing, and applauds to, Sabrina Giordano, because she goes way beyond. You don't shut your phone off. There's no way. When you're known in the community, you've done that, and it's just been great. But you know what? We need to have people be able to shut their phones off, and we don't want to put the burden always on the teacher. So we're working on that.
Did Sam have a question?
Thanks. I was going back to Melissa's, I raised my hand when Melissa was talking. So I just wanted to clarify something, and just correct me if I'm wrong, Ben. So if I had this conversation with somebody else recently, just because we have 10 cases at Gloucester High School doesn't mean that they were, transmitted in Gloucester High School. And so I think that's a very important distinction. So if people are questioning why we're not closing, even though we have 10 cases, it really matters where those cases were transmitted. And I've had to help clarify that for some people because they're scared of that number and question why we haven't closed, even though we have 10 cases. So I think we just need to make sure that for people who are watching, that's a clear distinction.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Sam. Again, of the 92 cases we've had since the beginning of school, only one just yesterday, came from something that happened in school. We do know almost almost always, most of the time, we do know where, if someone had a case, where it came from, meaning, and these days, as we've said, most of those are from a connection to a family or close friends. But you're right. And we also know, say the 10 cases at Gloucester High, we know staff, we know students, we know when it's going to be resolved. We know, if they're, are they in the same grade or same class? Those are the things we look at. If we saw, clusters or connection or patterns, then that would lead us to make different decisions. But these things, these are isolated at this point, except for this, they are separate. They come from outside of school. Those things are really important in giving us confidence that it's not the schools that are causing it. There's also, I think, a real argument to talk about, which is, I'm not sure if you shut down and have remote that it's safer for high school kids, very honestly. I think there is a real argument against that, and so I do understand that other communities shut down for 1 or 2 weeks. But I in some ways, the question is, does that prolong that getting together, whereas our folks are back in a routine. So again, we do know that Gloucester wants to be in. Boy, I appreciate that, believe me. But we will only stay in as long as it remains, safe and based on good guidance from the Department of Health. All right, let me just talk about testing, because there is a new option. So I'll remind folks of what we're currently doing quickly, and then go into the new options here. You can see the slides, I assume. Okay, so the first row here is our on-site PCR testing. I've been talking about that today. That's what we did 11 times last week, 7 times this week so far. That's no cost to GPS or the individual. Very importantly, it's staff or students who experience symptoms in school. So I come to school, I realize I have a cough, a headache, runny nose, that sort of thing. I go to the nurse. If I'm a staff or a student, I tell them that I have those symptoms. They said, let's give you a test. Those tests have been coming back in a day or two. So we get, quick information on that. The pool testing, I'll go over in more detail in a moment. And then the mobile testing from the state. We've talked about this numerous times. This is if we hit specific thresholds, which I mentioned earlier today, we can bring in mobile testing units from the state to do, an entire school basically in one shot, staff and students. So let me go into the pool testing. This is brand new information. I was on a webinar yesterday with the state. And they're hoping to get this launched end of January, early February. I would say after listening yesterday, late January is a little optimistic, but very important that there's an initial 6-week period that they do it for participating districts. Okay, and we've raised our hand already to say we'd like to participate in this. Okay, it doesn't mean we have to, but we at least are, we raised our hand. The first 6 weeks for all the test kits, all the support is at no cost. Okay. Following the initial 6-week launch, districts and schools, we can continue to use the pool testing, but we're purchasing those tests on our own dime, and other testing materials and other pieces. I'll go into that in a little more detail in a moment. Districts and schools who don't participate in the 6-week launch, which is, as I said, at no cost, could also then start it afterward, but you're paying for you're paying for full freight at that point. So a little background on the pool testing. It involves mixing a sample of students or staff. That can be, they've suggested 5 to 15 on the phone call yesterday. Here it says 10 to 25. You swab all those individuals, and then those are all tested at once. If that batch or pool comes back positive, then you have to, those individuals in that pool would be quarantined and have to stay out of school until they're tested again. At that point, the school would offer the rapid antigen testing, okay, which comes out very quickly. And any student or anybody in that pool who tested negative on, they call it reflex testing, then could return. Let me back a little bit. These are the short swabs. The samples can be administered by any trained school staff. That's nurses or other folks. In Salem, they're doing this. Nurses are helping, but also they have family and community liaisons at each school. They are helping with the administration. As I'll talk about in a little bit, administration can be very, very significant. This is what I'm talking about in terms of the pooled test result is negative. All individuals in that test, in that group remain in school. Let me give you an example. Say the school committee, everybody on this phone call, all of us, were considered a pool. Each week we'd be tested together. Okay, we're swabbed with the shallow swab. That's put together. It goes away. It gets assessed. If it comes back negative, we all keep in school. If it comes out positive, we all then get a rapid antigen test. If any of those who are negative in this group, in our group, go back to school, anyone who's positive would then have to quarantine as typical, and they would consider, doing the close contact tracing. A couple things. The testing service provider, so we would contract with the state, and they've contracted with other testing service providers, so different companies, different vendors. They provide the onboarding and continuing training. They provide the lab processing. They provide the tech system for registering and keeping track, and they also provide customer support. The schools and districts, us, provide coordination and direct administration of the program. We have to oversee all the ongoing operations of it, so our staff. We have to conduct a follow-up test on the positive protocols, those rapid antigen tests. We do those. We do the swab testing, the PCR testing, and we do the follow-up as well. So you can imagine, so I'll use Salem as an example. I think they test every Thursday. They're just doing their high school right now, high school staff and students, okay? They test on Thursday, they get results back on Saturday, and then you do the follow-up testing, and people stay out until they do the follow-up testing. After the 6 weeks of no cost, then it gets to $5 a swab at a minimum. It can be more than that if we buy other services in terms of administration and operations. Okay, that could be customer service, that could be delivery of tests to schools, that could be testing hardware, that could be coordination and communication. So at the minimum, it's $5 per swab. That's not a small amount. It's by far the least we've seen and the state has seen in terms of PCR tests. But at the same time, if you're doing everybody in the school system, about staff and students, that's about 3,000 people. That times 5 every week is $15,000 every week. Just to give you that information, okay? But we could also decide to do subsets of like, middle and high school, that sort of thing. Folks have used stimulus funding for this. The 3 schools and districts that were on the call yesterday, Medford, Salem, and also town of Watertown, have worked in partnership with their their city government, and have had support from the city government in executing it and paying for it. Just sharing that information. What we would have to be doing is managing all the testing logistics, overseeing the test administration, data entry, testing, coordinating, and managing it. We would administer the collection of students and staff. We'd be administering all the follow-up reflex testing, and we'd be transporting the tests to laboratories for processing, likely every day. That could be the reflex testing, or that could be the pool testing. So that's just again a quick introduction on it. There's more information to be learned. We're having a meeting tomorrow morning with Karen Carroll to make sure she's in the loop on this, and she can help us understand what makes sense and different options on how to do this well. But we'll have to make a bunch of decisions, and we're just in the beginning of the process to make decisions about how and whether we could pull this off operationally. It's not a small undertaking operationally, but obviously it'd be an important thing to do as best we can, if we can.
Okay. Questions? Laura?
And this may be a question more for Karen, but just as I listened to the description of the pool testing, the one thing that sort of stood out to me was that you give the pool a PCR test. There's some detection, say, for example, of some positive within that pool. And then the way to determine who's positive are the rapid tests, which I can consistently hear are less reliable.
Yeah, it actually was a question. It was like the first question that came up yesterday on the. In fact, they addressed it even before it could become a question, because it's a good concern. What they were saying very clearly is the Abbott Binax, the antigen testing, especially on, has grown more and more in terms of reliability. But really what they were hinging on, what they explained to us was the combination of the PCR and the rapid antigen. That is, a more robust testing regimen that they feel confident in. And I'm just relying on what they're saying. They explain the science to us. I'm not going to do that because I can't. But I think, that's where they're standing right now, is that combination. So you have essentially two positives. Is what confirms it.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Kathy?
Would this be voluntary?
Yeah, it would be voluntary. One of the things they talk about a lot is how much communication and coordination it takes. Communication and outreach to families and to staff, consent forms, getting people to return those, obviously translated community. We talked about earlier tonight, just the challenge we have right now communicating with families, especially those, who speak a language in addition to in English. But it is certainly voluntary. What they have found, the 3 districts, again, that our cities have been doing it, is that, opting in grows and grows as people become more familiar with it. And as they learn that it's the short swabs is actually a big thing. I can't remember the percentage they talked about, but it's, upwards of 80% and more participation after a few weeks.
Do you think, so I'm thinking of Salem specifically because I'm familiar with people in Salem. A lot of their grades have not been in school yet, but they are trying to get back in school. And I know the way it was presented is that testing was there and available in hopes that more kids would get back into school. So they have an incentive to get the negative test. Individual families definitely have that incentive because they want their kids back in school. Right. So I'm just, it'll be interesting to see the dynamics when our kids are in school, and for families that believe they're doing all the right things, they're not going anywhere. I'd just be curious how the participation, I guess I wouldn't want to think lack of participation would necessarily be a terrible thing if people are doing what they're supposed to do. So
yeah. I think
Kathy, that's so asinine. They have stopped the spread. They have residents only in Salem. They could have went there 1,050 times. If they're using that because they don't want to start their school, they don't want to go to school.
No, that's right. I've seen some communication. I think they've been very gentle in their thing, particularly for the students. This is young kids who,
if it's elementary, understandable, it's up to the parents and stuff, but they've had more accessibility. We've been sending a lot of our kids actually been stopping the spread, be going up there to get tested. Kids and families want to know. And as far as Melissa, when people were saying, I even brought that question up to the Board of Health and to Ben before school breaks, do we extend the school break? Well, they said, Mayor, this is how it is. If you're going to come back on the 4th, then you're going to come back from vacation and get all your testing done. If you're going to come back 2 weeks after, they're just going to stay on vacation wherever they are 2 weeks. I got calls from people who were still in Florida saying, are you stopping school? Because I need to know, because I'll change my ticket. So I don't think when we open, when we don't open, I just think that it's happening. The spread is happening. Some people still don't believe it. Some people, they're not being, they're still going and having their, home guest and not staying home in the mask. I've seen more and more people lenient with their mask. The 25% rollback, we are now looking at, and people saying, well, what about all of your supermarkets? Because, you're targeting small businesses. And my whole thing was, what about everything else? So your supermarkets now, especially like the ones that are always full, are now counting people, only 25%. They're doing that. We're staying on top of that. Yes, we, every day there's about 15 active more cases. Okay. Not all are going to the hospital. Some have passed. We know that. And we're doing the best we can. The only way that we're going to stop the spread is by wearing your mask, staying more than 6 feet if you can. If you can't, always have your mask on and always wash your hands and do whatever you can. It's the whole thing is sanitizing. And the children actually in our school system do it better than some of us on the outside, because they wear their mask all day long. They know what to do. The teachers, just like they teach them how to read, they taught them how to do that. And we should be very proud, because some of the students who can't be 6 feet apart, and the teachers are doing great. they're not the ones who are always getting tested for positive. So it's spreading among different scenarios. We just gotta keep doing what we're doing and get vaccinated, because those who want to, because guess what? Not everyone wants to either. So that's gonna be a whole new thing. So we just gotta keep doing it. And you know what? We're trying the best we can. And tomorrow we have a meeting with Ben on that, the swab, whatever that new thing is, what we can do. So just so you know.
Other questions? Okay.
Any other questions before we move on to attendance? Okay.
Thank you,
Okay, Ben.
folks. Greg Bach. Do you want to, can you share your screen?
Yeah, be happy to.
Okay, great.
Give me 1 second, Greg. Okay, you should be all set. Does James Cook and Mike Muniz need to be panelists for this?
Mike may need to be if there are specific questions about the data.
Okay, so he's in the attendees. I'll move him up to a panelist.
We can leave Principal Cook out of it for now. We'll give him a break.
Okay, while we're waiting for that, I do want to just say that this, just to set the expectations in the proper place, this is a little bit earlier than usual because we have fewer days in session. So it's a smaller number of, it's a smaller sample size, smaller number of days in session. And clearly we have some unusual, there's an unusual situation this year. We have specifically asked families to keep children home if they have any symptoms, and those may not end up being COVID symptoms, but there are a lot of symptoms that have some similarities. So we've done a really strong push of asking people to stay home when they're sick to stop any spread, and that, in my opinion, is something that would result in higher higher absenteeism than normal, just by virtue of the campaign that we've put in place. So it's a little bit of a tough year to take a look at attendance, and it's very hard to do any comparative work from prior years. But we wanted to share with you tonight just the data as a snapshot for where we are at the beginning of January. And then if it's okay with you, Superintendent Lummis, I'd like to offer that after you take a look at this data tonight, because this is not a night about talking about necessarily about responses or drawing significant conclusions from the data, it's really a preview of where we're headed. If there are questions or if there are things that you would like to look more deeply into, it makes sense to me to book another meeting soon to have that further analysis in the areas that you would like to see, and also possibly to have the people who would be most directly responsible for interventions and responses to absenteeism, to have them here to respond. So I'm simply sharing with help from Mike Muniz, who pulled the data together. I'm simply sharing the data as a snapshot from early January. So with that, I will share my screen. Okay, here we go. Okay, quick update again, just the numbers at the moment. At the this initial slide is just a reminder of our total enrollment and the number of students who are in person and the number of students who are remote. And then by school, the ratio of in-person to remote. So for example, at GHS, there are 128 students remote and 600 in person. I'm going to give, it's a little hard for me to see everybody while presenting. So Ben, if you wouldn't mind, just let me know if you see a hand up or anybody who'd like to ask a question. I'll give you a moment to take a look at those ratios across the schools. Okay. Next thing we'll take a look at is our attendance rate. These are broken down by these are all elementary schools, but this is a combination of in-person and remote all together. And then this at our elementary schools in the center is the average attendance rate at the for in-person 92.13. And then in our remote academy for elementary schools, we're maintaining 95.4%. Just to put this in perspective, our overall attendance rate for elementary schools, schools really strive for 95% and above, and it typically falls on average across the schools at about 95%. So we are seeing, at this point in the year, we're seeing about the same attendance as we typically would see on a normal year. We are seeing in a remote, and slightly lower for in-person. I'm going to try not to editorialize much, but there are moments where I'm surprised by some of this data, and we'll see how that pans out over the year. But some of these results seem to be pretty good to me as far as the attendance rate. O'Malley attendance typically runs, and Mike, if you could please just shout out if Mike is quite experienced at putting together the attendance year after year for the state report. And he's pretty familiar with how things typically look at mid-year. And my understanding is that O'Malley typically runs at about 94%, if I recall correctly. And in person at O'Malley at the moment, 93.04. So that's really not much below a typical year. And then it is somewhat higher, almost 95% for a remote at O'Malley. So attendance is, again, in just this quick snapshot, is not looking too off at the middle school at all. The high school is a slightly different matter. On a typical year, the attendance, I believe last year was 91% or 90.8% for all of the high school, and 91 the year before. So this is significantly below the average of about 91%. Translates to in-person 84.6, and remote at GHS is where at the moment we're seeing really substantially below at 73%. And I'd be happy to pause at any of these if anybody like a little bit longer look. I did share this with school committee members as well. If we take a look at English language learners attendance, we have all English learners at 82.95. This is across the district. In person, 82.8, and remote 83. So not a huge difference in remote versus in person. And that is a bit below a normal year. This is a quick look at the attendance rate for the elementary schools. So we'll break down, and Plum Cove, West Parish, East Gloucester, Beaman, and Veterans with a low of 90. Average up here when we take a look at this dashboard. And again, thank you to Mike. He put all of the data, and he had to do a fair amount of work because DESE is requiring attendance to be transmitted differently so that we get an idea of the different hybrid, remote, full remote, and full in. So we have the overall attendance rate, 92.6%. And this is the average absent rate. And then this is the average number of days absent at this point. And we have over 70 days and an average of 4.89 average absent days at the elementary schools. This is a comparison of the attendance rate. We had been in the 90s for English learners. The attendance rate is a bit lower. And this just gives you an idea of across the elementary schools how that's looking, with an average number instead of 4.9, about 8 days. Attendance rate at O'Malley schools, all students 93.44%. And for English learners, that drops from 94% to 82%. For attendance rate at high school, overall attendance rate 82.9% for all students and 71.9% for English learners. We can take a look at chronic attendance rate. This gives you an idea across all of the schools in the district. The chronic absenteeism is we set at 10% of days in session. So students who are missing more than 7 or more days would be in chronically absent, because that translates to 18 days out of the school year, which is pretty substantial. This is the breakdown for chronically absent versus, if we say non-ELL students, 33% of our non-ELL students are chronically absent, meet that threshold, and 66 do not, are below the chronically absent, or not chronically absent. When we look at this, this is not a mistake where the colors are mixed up. This is actually just indicates that the much larger portion of the ELL subgroup is actually chronically absent, with an average of 11.4 days absent. When we look at regular and special education students, we see a difference as well across all the schools. 33.6% of our regular education students would be considered chronically absent, 66 not chronically absent. And when we look at the special education subgroup across all of schools, that goes from 33% to 41.7%. When we take a look at economically disadvantaged, non-economically disadvantaged, 28.7%, with an average days absent of 5.5 days. And that for the economically disadvantaged subgroup goes from 28% to 47.5% chronically absent, and 5.5 days jumps to 9.25 days. That is a quick run through of the overall, the in-person versus remote, and also some of our subgroups. Again, keeping in mind that we are a little over 70 days in, and other factors make it very difficult to compare year on year. I do have some notepad out, and I'd be happy to take some questions that I may be able to answer at this moment. And we do have Mike, who has stayed with us since the beginning of the meeting, to answer any questions that specifically be relative to data collection. And then I'll take some notes for any future requests for further analysis, as well as perhaps some responses.
Melissa?
Just a quick question. What kind of outreach is there, and what is the responses, if you know, to reaching out to parents to finding out the reason for the attendance being down? Like, so in other words, you see a child is out for a couple of days, I know there's outreach by the school district because I know a family that happened to. Do you know of any responses from the family as to why the attendance is what it is?
Again, I do think that this is something that we should bring the most directly involved, Gail, the attendance officer for the district, as well as probably some key principals we could bring together. So specifically, I'm just making a note on outreach. I can guarantee you that there's been a tremendous amount of outreach. I see the kind of connections happening to families. There's a lot of outreach at the teacher level. Just in remote academy alone, where I have a lot of contacts with teachers, I see the enormous amount of email and phone calls going out, and those teachers, and I am quite certain that this happens across the district in every classroom, are right on the attendance and reach out with questions that range from, is there anything that we can do to help? Are there challenges with the academics? Is there anything that, that they communicate the concerns, they communicate the impact on education, and they also reach out to ask if there are supports that we can provide, and they connect those parents with the counselors at the schools, the principals. I know this firsthand from the partnering with the principals over the last few months. The principals make personal calls and are doing all manner of things to try to respond to parents' needs, including, securing transportation. The principals have worked with Adam to an extraordinary length to provide busing and to even connect parents with neighbors who are children are going to the same school and might be able to all walk together to a bus stop. I mean, I know that this kind of personal outreach is happening extensively. We could have and should probably have Gail talk about district-wide approaches. I know she's extremely active as well. So I just know there's a lot happening at the classroom and teacher level, as well as from the principals.
I just can't help but wonder. I mean, in my job, I know there's a lot of depression going on. There's a lot of people are just worn out. They're tired of this COVID. They just don't feel like getting out of bed. The kids don't feel like getting out of bed. They're on their screens more. It just seems like there's so much going on. It's hard for me to really be concerned about any attendance this year, just knowing that the world is upside down and with all that's going on is really, it's difficult to put it into perspective and compare it to anything.
It is, and that's why I led with the intro that I led with, which is, I know we have some areas of concern, and we do have to continue to do all we can. But I know that we also have given the message that it's very important for the safety of all to stay home when sick. So on some level, it's going to be very hard to get to the bottom of how many attendance cases are caused by people doing the right thing and keeping children out,
right,
and how many are caused by other factors. And it's going to be it's a puzzle that's going to take a lot of input and feedback to figure out.
Kathy?
Thank you.
Greg, the people that are close contacts and have to stay home, are they considered absent even though they might be actively learning and participating asynchronously? I just know of some examples of people really saying how, the teachers have immediately given them work. That they've done everything they can to keep students up to speed. So are they technically absent because they're not in their typical schedule? And should we have a category for that so we can dissect, and I understand the chronic absenteeism probably is not that case. I'm just thinking of some of the others.
So I see Mike on, and I hope Mike corrects me immediately if I'm wrong, if I misspeak, because there have been a number of coding changes and reporting changes to DESI. But my understanding is that if a student in elementary school classroom, for example, has to stay out due to quarantining, that is considered absent as far as the state is concerned. Please interrupt me if I'm mistaken, Mike.
No, that's
Even
correct.
though, excuse me, Mike?
I believe that's correct. Yep.
Okay, yeah, even though, as has been mentioned a number of times, teachers may be going above and beyond to provide work, feedback, support while that student is out, and that student may be continuing to make decent progress because of that support. That student is still counted as absent. The only time they would not be absent is if they are officially in a remote program. So
Right,
student,
because even at the high school, even they may not be in half the day they're supposed to be in, they could still be on in the other half of the
Yeah.
day on their on the remote time.
that is true. And I don't know how that one particularly is coded. And Mike may have an answer to that, where a student is not in person for half of the day, but is attending the afternoon component. I'm not sure if that has come up, Mike.
Now that'd be specific to the school. It would be daily attendance, whether they're attending for enough of the day to be considered absent or present,
Yeah.
which in a normal year is half a day. So
Okay,
that would be specific to some of the policies that might be in place if the student didn't get to attend X amount of classes during that day.
So there is some potential there, and we'll have to talk to James about how they are managing. I know that certainly at the high school, they've made, they have figured out how to provide, how to shift students into, or to provide some of the remote access for students. I know that some teachers have been providing both in-person instruction and streaming for students as well. So I'm not quite sure about how that works out when somebody is on quarantine, but that may be a solution that he's providing. Certainly at the elementary, if a student is out for multiple days, even if they're getting some support from a teacher, we do have to count them as absent.
okay. Understood. Thank you.
Okay, Samantha? Did you have a question, Samantha? No, Laura?
I just had two questions that maybe for the time we dig a little deeper.
Mhm.
One is if you have any sense of, I noticed that that students are absent even when they're remote. And I'm wondering about technology issues, how that plays in, confusion and distraction related to the technology. I know how well Grant and the whole team is done on getting everybody in a Chromebook and everything else, but if there's confusion in the usage, somebody could just turn it off. So that's just one piece, and that may not be the case at all. I don't know. And then I'm also just curious. We've heard a lot of really great information about the EL program and how closely the teachers are working with those students. And so to see how the absenteeism rate, especially knowing how closely these teams work, I'd love to dig a little deeper into that. Maybe that's for the next meeting, but noticing that.
Yeah, I that's something that certainly does stand out in the data. And, I'm also well aware of the amount of personal sort of tireless outreach that those teachers are engaging in. But it simply underscores in my mind the magnitude of the challenge. And there are a lot of factors, I would imagine, that are involved. And as far as remote learning, I do think that particularly at K through 8, the percentages were quite high and were in some cases above our average percentage. So I think there's a good story there. It may be, though, there may be times when for English learners, the remote format may not be advantageous to an English learner. It may be much more difficult to manage, and it may be that the curricula is not does not lend itself to remote delivery in a way that is helpful to an English learner. So, I think there are some components that we're going to have to explore there as well. I certainly know it's not from lack of care and effort, that's for sure. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I have a couple of questions, Greg. And this is for the next, when we look at this a little closer, but it would really make a difference whether we knew how many of these absences were COVID related and how many are not, because certainly if a kid has to quarantine for 14 days, that immediately puts them into very close to the realm of being chronic absentee.
Yeah, and in fact, at this point in the year, it would.
Yeah, so it may just be that people are doing a good job of staying home, which I'm sure you're aware of, but it'd be nice to have, if we could mesh those the bit of data, because I mean, Ben knows how many cases we've had, and I'm sure it's there somewhere.
We'll have to
Yeah.
talk that over with Mike, because on some level, the picture that we create locally can be independent from what we have to report to the state. The state may say an absence is an absence,
Right.
but we can do a lot more analysis if we can match it up to those to give a picture of how COVID has impacted things.
We may not need to be reacting to an increase in chronic absenteeism if it's just because kids are quarantining. The other thing that struck me, and I wish you'd left the initial slide up, but it appeared to me, just a quick look, that we've lost a number of students, substantially more than, this has nothing to do with absenteeism. This is enrollment. And I would be interested in finding out how many, you had those numbers up. So,
But Jonathan also noticed it was K through 12, not pre-K through 12.
yeah, but East Gloucester was at 184 kids, not 210. So it'd be interesting to know where those students have gone. That's not about attendance, though. That's just something that struck me.
Yeah, and Mike's listening as well, and I wrote a note as well for to be able to respond to that.
Right. Okay. Anything else? Well, thank you, Mike, and thank you, Greg, because
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Do much.
we'll have to do some follow-up on this. Okay. Moving on. You don't have anything else, do you, Ben? Okay, we'll move on to committee reports. We have the Building and Finance Subcommittee reports of the budget meetings. Most of you are in attendance, but Kathy, you want to just perhaps summarize the three meetings?
Yes, I'll summarize the meetings. We met on Thursday, Monday, and Tuesday, department and school level meetings spread out among that time. The format I thought was tremendous in that the department heads and principals worked with the superintendent to reflect on what they're doing well, what their strengths are, what they're working on to kind of further it, and a little bit of what they need. But it was all a report on the educational aspects, not the financial aspects. We'll hear how that impacts their, an overall budget and department budget on January 20th. But we heard a lot about, pride with and the real benefit of collaboration that teachers and schools are experiencing currently, and that they want things like that to, that particular practice to continue and build on. Same with a lot of professional development, but not necessarily external professional development, but really peer-to-peer development. We heard about focus on the English language learner students and efforts to, really focus in and make better gains with that population. There's focus on academic achievement, specifically needs for coaching at different levels. We talked about summer programs to help with students who may have fallen behind. So it's good to hear that we're thinking about how that summer can help September be more successful to a lot of kids. I think if kids feel like they are so far behind, hopefully, we can help them not give up. And maybe a summer program will help motivate some students who probably feel and aren't learning as well as they could be maybe during this remote or this hybrid time. We heard about a need for a new K-8 assessment, STAR 360, as well as a new revision in the Math in Focus curriculum as being things they would need to help progress in areas that they have highlighted. We heard from food service who would like to, in September, when students are more in school, do a lot more trying out of menu options to get more participation and make sure students are eating, but also enjoying what they eat. We heard a lot from Grant Harris on technology, and it's impressive as to how many devices that department has rolled out and are now maintaining so that all of our students can be actively learning in a remote environment. Even if it's a hybrid remote, everybody is really having terrific access to technology, as well as infrastructure investments and things like that. All the meetings were recorded, and I just found it really inspirational to hear about all the focus on the educational aspects prior to hearing about numbers, because I think sometimes when you watch and see a graph and you see all the numbers, you're looking at numbers and you're not hearing all about where those numbers came from. And this really helped us focus on listening to, to the people closest to how our students are learning and how our schools are being run, transportation and everything that all help our families be successful and be connected with our schools. So that's my report on the budget. I was going to also give a report on the building committee, if that's okay, Jonathan? Yeah. Okay. You're muted, but I'm going to assume you say yes.
I'm shaking my head, yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to be giving the building committee report, and you and Ben can chime in if you if I leave anything out you think is important to mention. One thing that the community should know is that the designers have to do just one short day of drilling on Monday, Martin Luther King Day, at Veterans Memorial School site. Signs will be posted so people know that the playground and the fields are not available. So just that's kind of an FYI to the community. The Interiors Committee has met once, but we have another meeting scheduled for tomorrow at 2 o'clock. The Exterior Subcommittee have met 2 times. So those options and discussions are happening, right? They did meet twice, right?
Just once.
Just once, okay.
Just
So
once.
they
We're meeting next week.
next week, okay. So those meetings are ongoing as they're trying to nail down some of the design details. Swing Space, we had a meeting on Tuesday morning. That was a public meeting, so the public can see how the information that's coming forth. There were 2 responses to the proposals, requests for proposals, one from Pathways and one from St. Anne's. We evaluated based upon The fit, we talked about that. No decisions have been made. We've toured both sites on December 15th prior to the holiday break. Doran Whittier has brought subcontractors to evaluate the conditions at St. Anne's. Their report is due around January 22nd. So that's really the next key milestone in that particular process of talking about that building. Pathways, we talked about some of the, one of the big issues so far is just the amount of space and how many students can actually, and staff can actually fit there. They've sent a floor plan that's being evaluated to see if there are any options to maximize that as an option. So the group will meet again either on January 25th. There's already public meetings posted for January 25th at 9 and January 27th at 9. Hopefully the report will be ready for January 25th. And then there's a second meeting just in case we have more questions and things to discuss on January 27th. Then that decision or recommendation would come to the school committee that evening as to which site might be best for the swing space for the 2 years. Doran Whittier continues to work on the design development. They're on the calendar going forward. They will present both to the city council and the school committee probably around March 20th or thereabouts, prior to the building committee discussing that design report on March 25th. I hope I said March for the presentations to us. Yes, March. So we're a couple months out, but that's when those presentations will happen. And the last thing on it is the building committee will meet tomorrow at 5 p.m. It's our regular monthly meeting.
Thank you, Kathy. I'll just add two quick things, but that's very comprehensive. Really appreciate it a ton. The committee had asked to have more regular updates, so that's what we're trying to do, and Kathy helped a ton on that one. Is a week from today, we'll have a community forum, public community forum about the building project. Really sort of an overview of this phase of the project as we work on completing the design. And we share some of the work that's happening in the exterior and interior subcommittees, but really just give folks an introduction to the process here, the timeline, that sort of thing, and I think be able to take some questions as well. And that's for the East Gloucester and veteran school communities and the city at large. And also tomorrow, I believe, we'll be launching a new project website. We've had two in the past. And the reason we're making a third is because we're trying to consolidate them into one, one project website for all of them. And we think we know it'll be easier to update, and therefore we'll be able to provide some more, timely information, and be a real go-to spot for people to get information about upcoming events, upcoming meetings, and records of meetings, and just know what's happening with the project.
Laura?
Ben, I may have just missed you saying this, but do you have a date for that public?
Yeah, it's a week from today at I believe 7 o'clock at 7 o'clock. Yeah, we need to start. We need to get the word out on that one. Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions on the building committee, or et cetera? Okay, moving on to action. We have a number of grants to accept, and the first one is the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education grant for $36,026. It's the FY21 fund code 423 secondary virtual course grant. I believe this is related to the remote learning. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion?
Can someone explain what this grant is? Please.
Mr. Bach?
Yep. This is a new grant that just popped up. It was a very recent one. with a very short turnaround time. And it is going to fund, actually it's going for this fiscal year, it's allowed to offset any expenses that we incurred for providing virtual courseware. So the Plato Edmentum software at the high school, we were able to take the bill that we have paid for the current year and charge it, we'll be able to charge it to this grant for FY21. So it's going to go directly to Edmentum. The other thing that we are doing with it is we're able to offset the cost of a staff member who is associated directly with the support of remote learners and the virtual platform Edmentum at the high school. So a portion of one of the special educators' salaries who was assigned to work with the remote learners at the high school in conjunction with the Plato program. Those are the two items that this grant is going to be funding.
Thank you.
And you said this came up very quickly, so this was not, we weren't anticipating this a month ago. So this
Nope,
was
not at all.
Okay. Good. Any other discussion? Maria, could we have a roll call vote?
Ms. Prince,
Yes.
Mayor Taken,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Kathy Clancy,
Yes,
Mr. Favazza,
Yes.
and Chairman Pope.
Yes, it passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Now we have 4 grants from the Gloucester Education Foundation. The first one is $4,000 for Community Resource Dog, which we've heard great things about. I believe its name's Ace, is that correct? And $5,235 for the Gloucester High School and the O'Malley Remote Academy, Girls in STEM continued program funds, $30,000 for the remote learning centers, and $30,000 for the Gloucester High School Gordon Summer Engineering Camp, for a total of $69,235. Without objection, I'd like to take these all at once. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Melissa?
I just have a process question. So the grant involving Ace, I mean, I'm a huge fan of Ace. He's just the most adorable dog I've ever met, besides my own now. But I have a question. So why are we accepting a grant on the dog's behalf? I mean, is the school funding the dog? Are we being charged for the services?
It's
I'm
for
just
the
curious how
books.
that works.
They made
Oh,
little
okay.
stuffed animals and they made a book. So
Yeah.
it's not a resource dog. It's a
Okay.
what do you call it? Oh my God, a therapy dog. It's
Yeah.
not a watchdog.
Service.
It's a therapy. No, it's not a service dog. It's a therapy dog. So when a child or someone's upset in the schools, or it would go. But when you take the dog away, the child's still a little bit upset. So they want to give the child a book that's all about Ace and a little stuffed animal that looks like Ace. And the Gloucester Education Foundation actually supported that.
Great.
So I know they haven't made that announcement yet, I don't think publicly, but.
Well,
I
then
saw
you
it.
shouldn't have asked, shouldn't have you?
Yeah,
Yes.
I know, yeah. Awesome. No, I'm happy to hear that. I was just curious how that, I didn't want to get tied up in something we weren't supposed to be involved in, but I'm really happy to hear that. So thank you for that explanation.
You're welcome.
Any other discussion? Once again, we're very grateful for the Gloucester Education Foundation and all the resources that they provide to help Gloucester students be successful. Could we have a roll call vote, Maria?
Ms. Prince,
Yes.
Mayor Taken,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Kathy Clancy,
yes,
Mr. Favazza,
Yes.
and Chairman Pope.
Yes, it carries unanimously. Thank you very much. We are going to Our next order of business will be to go into executive session. But before that, is there any communications or new business that anybody would like to bring up before we go into executive session? Melissa?
Sorry, I'm not bringing up something new. I just see approval of the AFSCME contract on there. So I didn't know if we were doing that before we went into executive.
Well, we haven't presented an executive session yet.
Oh, okay. I thought we did. I'm sorry.
So
Okay.
if I don't believe it has been ratified by them. So
Okay.
we will just table that. We will talk about it in executive session and take a vote on it there. Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anything
Sorry.
else? There are a number of things that I would like to refer. One would be to investigate, and I may have already done this, but the options of use again silverware and plates in our cafeterias and
It's on
in
the agenda.
relationship. Pardon me?
That's on the agenda for BNF next week.
Okay, great. All right. Okay. Then, and also we need to start thinking about a process for naming the new school. Okay. That being said, we're going to go into executive session for the purpose in executive session in pursuant of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for the following purpose: as an open meeting may have detrimental effect on bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and to return to open session only to adjourn. We will be discussing strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the following negotiating teams: AFSCME, GAPE, GTA, and the nurses. And do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All right, Maria, could we have a roll call vote? And as I said, we will only come back into session to adjourn.
Just to clarify first, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
you're not coming back to vote on the AFSCME contract, correct?
No, we're not. They have not ratified it yet, as far as I know,
Okay.
unless you know something I don't know.
No, I don't.
I did.
Thank you.
I'm talking to Eric tomorrow morning.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Ms. Prince,
Yes.
Mayor Taken,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes, but I have to recuse myself from the GTA conversation.
okay. Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Kathy Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Favazza,
Yes.
and Chairman Pope.
Yes. So we're going into executive session, which is the other meeting. So you leave this meeting and we'll see you in the Google Meet. And for the people listening, thank you very much for attending.